about it. So thanks for taking extra time out of your day to do this. I always
Sure.
appreciate having feedback and being able to throw it out as we've transitioned so much, especially since COVID. I always have a challenging time explaining to new potential clients what we
Mhm.
do, which I
Yeah.
think is silly. I should be obviously able to do it, but I love having these conversations with members that it works really well for, so that if people want to, they can tune in and get some feedback from a bunch of different people. We have such a diverse
Real
group. So,
people.
real people. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I've prepared four questions for you
Oh
just to
gosh. Okay.
kind
I
of
might I
guide.
might
They're
take us on
simple.
a different direction. Who knows? But okay,
I know.
sure.
I know, which I love because really I mean, it's sort of like a podcast style conversation more than a
Hmm.
testimonial video, right? Because I always like to check in on you every so often. But I found a written testimonial from you 3 weeks before COVID hit, which is very funny. So I'm going to read one of the
Wow.
questions that you answered
Okay.
after I ask you the first question. So I think that you'll find that fairly entertaining. I think a lot of it is very similar still, like
Okay.
almost 3 years later, which is awesome. But just for anyone listening who isn't familiar with you or with me at all, we have been a constant in each other's life for several years now. I want to say you started in the year of 2018
Yeah,
in the
that's right.
fall. I think so. And
In the
so
spring.
was it in the spring? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And so you were referred to by your tennis coach at the time,
Yeah.
and who was my partner at the time as well, we are not together anymore, but you and I are still together, which I
Yeah.
love. And
I'm
since
the
that
product of
time,
your union.
that's right. One of them, one of the connections for sure, which I
Yeah.
love. And I would never have met you otherwise. So I love that. But you and I have walked through now COVID. I was just reviewing this morning and kind of preparing for this conversation. So we've had COVID, which led us to a transition into online training from a system that worked very, very well, where we trained with a small group of people who are still many of them around with you in a small studio in downtown Winnipeg. And it was a beautiful system. It worked really well. We trained a few times a week together, and you made great progress, to which we then moved to another facility. And then COVID hit and we transitioned online. And I've had two babies since then, and that hasn't impacted us still being a constant in each other's lives, 2 to 4 times training every single week. And more recently now, just within the last month, you have moved from Winnipeg to Toronto, which has been a huge step, and gotten engaged to your partner, and now you're going to start a new job and you're sitting in a brand new apartment. So the list of transitions for us is like very,
Uh,
very long. So
Lots can happen in 4 years.
lots can happen in 1 year, especially two. Yeah, no,
Hmm.
exactly. So, with all that being said, what do you feel works best for you about your current gold membership and how we're doing things now?
And how we're doing things now. Yeah. Well, I mean, the obvious thing for me is I'm not in the city, so
Yeah.
it has allowed me to sort of keep things going with the videos and then with the Zoom piece.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, there's like different things are going to work for different people, and I think we can probably talk all day about all the different transitions and how different things worked at different times. I think one of the things that has been the constant is um, feeling like I always know why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. So whether that
Mm,
was back when we were in person, where it was a little more personalized. I'd come in and you'd say, I want you to work on this, and it was sort of like, oh, okay, that sort of makes sense in terms of what I've been working on. To now with the video series, and right now I'm in combinations 5. Um, you know, I was reflecting before this conversation about like how is it that this has managed to engage me for as
yeah.
long as it has, not being someone who had any background in fitness or anything. And I think it's just because like you're kind of a nerd, uh, like, and so like the videos, because I know people who will just turn on a YouTube video and that works for them, um, and and it's just like we're gonna do 20 of these, and then music plays and you do 20 of those. But like with you. and why it has continued to work, even though it's a bit of a different model, is, I'll play a video. I know you're watching on Zoom, if my posture gets bad or something. But then you'll say, okay, like we're gonna do this for 2 minutes, and then you talk for the whole 2 minutes. Like, you could try this. The reason that we're doing this is because of this.
Right.
This muscle is connected to that. If this is too easy, you should do this. If this is too hard, this is do this. And then you'll sing for a bit, and then and then and then it'll be more sort of explanation and talking. And I think, and I don't want to steal the punch because this might be in another question, but like in terms of the community that you've managed to build, like there's so much, like it's so thought out that for people who need to kind of not just do a thing and be yelled at, but who need to kind of know why they're doing it and who are a little bit more cerebral, I think it's why it works so well, because it's always like, yeah, it's like engaging, and you have the ability, even though I might be watching the same video as somebody else who maybe is, has a different body than me, is a different, like on a different journey than me, the ability to sort of go, oh, I'll just go a little bit lighter, they'll go a little bit heavier, you'll give a sort of, different modifications that we're all able to sort of get to where we want to go because you've put the work in to explain all the different ways that we could be doing the thing. So I found, like, for especially in the last month or two, like being here in a new place, and for a while, my stuff hadn't arrived yet. So all I had was like 2 dumbbells and a mat. It shouldn't have been surprising, but it was eye-opening to just be like, oh, like this is actually fine. Like I still feel like I'm working hard. And that's just, I think, yeah, a credit to all the thought that goes into designing the videos. And then the special sauce of just having you around, looming, just making sure that like you're doing it properly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Oh, there's a fly. I was going to try and kill it before we started. I have a fly. I'm ready. If it comes any
Oh,
closer,
that'll be
I'm
good
ready.
TV if you're just chasing around the
Good
fly.
TV. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. I mean, that's awesome because there are obviously so many challenges with this transition, being a trainer who had the opportunity to work in person with people for around a decade before we made this transition. And so with the gyms actually closing and not being able to go and access them, I was able to train live we trained live when we first transitioned online from the end of March all the way up until the end of November. And then December 1st of 2020, we launched this new format to which we're speaking of now, where we have a program and we do Zoom and we go forward. So it's been very interesting to take my education and skill set and to create this out of, I don't want to say thin air, because I did have a group of people that were doing a program called Program 365, to which you're reviewing in the testimonial I'm about to read from that time period when that was kind of first starting. And I always wanted to create something like this to support people who were coming into the gym, but have them do homework on the off days where they weren't training with me. So the result from coming into the gym would be greater if you would spend 20 or 30 minutes doing this mobility on like a Wednesday when you're not planning to come to do in-person stuff. So that was sort of where the dream of this program sort of came into play. And then all of a sudden we were sort of on that pathway already. And so I found that the online transition was much easier for our community compared to other fitness trainers that I was seeing in the community, trying to kind of like, what is Zoom? How do I figure this out? Like, how do I record and put something on a platform? And I don't have a website that supports this or the app for this or whatever. So I feel like it actually was a very smooth transition habitually, but from a content perspective, of course, there were a lot of different challenges, and being pregnant a couple times through the whole process and knowing that everybody is so different. I have very much committed to keeping our community very small rather than trying to grow it, because I wanted to get the result that you just spoke on very beautifully for a little while. And so that like I obviously am going to hold myself together, as we did, last week when we were talking about this conversation and almost in tears about your transition moving to Toronto, because
Yeah.
for me, personal training is personal. It's not just training. It's not just this random thing that we're going to do. There's always a human being with preferences and goals. And, while we can take a generalized program and apply it to people, it always ends up being specific to what that person is working on or wants to do. And as I'm speaking to people like Stuart Murray, who have been around for, he started back in 2011 in spring or fall. And so this has continued to work for him as well for that long. And so when we chat, we go, okay, we're still together. We're still very much engaged with each other. We still have this love for each other. And we want to show up multiple times every single week through the year. Why is that happening? Right? Like, what is working really well and what do we need to add? And that kind of thing. So I'm beyond excited that you're, still here. It's so amazing as a coach to watch you go through so many transitions, but keep this a constant no matter what, realizing that all these barriers are there. But if you just show up and do the thing, and even if you don't fully understand why you're doing the strength and this order and the conditioning and then the stretching, if you just show up and do the work and do it properly, we have time to sort of explain it and figure it out as time goes on. But I think that commitment to just do it and be in it is important in terms of finding that success eventually, especially with all these interesting challenges, right? Because it hasn't worked for some people who are now back in the gym more recently. And it's interesting because all of the
Right.
things that I was able to solve that exist from actually driving and going somewhere physically to meet a trainer have been solved by this program. And now, after 2 years being back in the gym, I'm reminded that all of those barriers still exist and that this program is the solution to all of that. So it's very interesting now having the opportunity to kind of anticipate and then experience that as well. But it is an interesting format to, you have to be comfortable zooming a little bit more, even if you also are zooming a million other times through the week for other things. So that's kind of interesting too,
Yeah.
that you've been able to figure that part out and have it not be just something that's unenjoyable, like I have at least one member coming to mind that you used to train with consistently, and she really tried and tried and tried to make this work. And we just kind of realized eventually, like, you know what, you don't want to work out on the computer at home in your living room, and that's okay. But for many of you, it's actually better in a lot of ways. So as you said in the beginning, everyone is very different. So I'm very glad that it still works for you and that we can still work together despite the fact that now you've moved cities. So if we were still in person, that wouldn't be an option. So it's a wonderful,
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
not sure
it's a
what I would have
wonderful
done
thing.
actually. So it
Totally. Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
it's interesting. And I think like for a lot of us that were around before, I think all of us when the transition first happened, were probably not happy about it. Like I
For
just
sure
think
not.
like we were
I
all
agree with
like,
you.
what do you mean you want us to jump around in front of our computers? And like how is that ever going to sort of get us to where we want to go? And
Yeah.
I remember the first couple times where it was just, like it kind of took so long to sort of explain what was happening that by the
Mm,
end of the 40 minutes, it was like, I don't feel like I've done anything. And of course,
mm,
like anything else, you know, everyone gets sort of better at it. And at this point, it would be my preferred way of doing things. And I would have never expected that having come from
mm-hmm,
what would have been 2 years of like
mm-hmm.
the semi-private in the gym.
Yeah.
So it's just funny. People are adaptable, and you start to like. There's
Yeah.
pros and cons for both,
Yeah.
but yeah, it just
Yeah.
so happened that yeah, I kind of started
Still
to like
doing
it.
the thing. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Started to like it. That's a powerful sentence. I love that. Okay. So I'm going to read this testimonial because I think it is
Sure.
very endearing and amazing. And so some things are similar and some things are not from this time period. So this was a testimonial that you wrote between or around the week of March 2nd to 6th of 2020. So again, just before COVID hit.
Oh wow.
So my question
Yeah.
was, Isn't it great that I printed this and I still have it on file? Like I am a nerd, as you said. Like I just have to know exactly what people need so I can do my job. So I said, how would you rate your current personal training solution you are investing in? A 1 out of 10. Your explanation is welcome. And you gave a rating of 9.5, which I thought was very generous. However, you explained exactly where it's coming from.
I have no
I
recollection
have.
of this, by the way. So
Really? Oh, I love it. This is
yeah.
amazing. Yeah, you said, hi, Angie. I'll write answers below. See you tomorrow. Sent from your iPad at 12:55 p.m. Anyway, so 9.5 was the rating out of 10. And so this was before the online was exclusive for us. So you said based on my personality, so this would have been we were together in the gym around it had been around 2 years and we had moved to Movement FMP already. You said based on my
Mm.
personality, it's almost impossible I would have stuck with this any longer if any of the ingredients would have been different, which I love.
Okay.
And then, okay, I wouldn't have done well with an aggro dude trainer. I wouldn't have done well if I didn't like my counterparts. I do sometimes feel like I don't know for sure when a program is done or whether or not I did okay. For example, I assume if there's a new program, then maybe we would have a barbell, presumably, and as I would practice, compared to the previous program, it would go okay. But I'm always very curious if things are overall on track and how one program informs the next. But like, I can live with the mystery. And I also know that as long as things are still challenging, I know the program's well planned and that we're moving forward in some way. I also decided this week that I really like the first day of a new program because it's very hard. And I feel like I'm embarking on a new challenge. I wouldn't want this every single day, but I think I finally get why the new program switcheroo is kind of fun, actually. Finally, considering how small my frame is, the fact that I've never been injured beyond this idiotic scratch on my nose is a huge testament to your skill.
What the hell did I do to my nose?
I don't know. I don't remember. I think you scratched your nose doing something in a workout, and that was
I
what you
must
were
have.
referencing at that time.
Amazing.
It is
Okay, great.
amazing. Yeah, but I think like your personality is obviously still, the same as it was then. And as you described in the beginning, there was a bit of a learning curve in terms of like, okay, what is this program? What am I doing? What's the point? How do I achieve this? I'm working on something different from this person. So like, how are we going to figure this out? And you also describe here that you enjoy the first day of a program because it's challenging, to which we were just speaking about a couple weeks ago when you started Combinations 5, which is a new progression to this 6-month program. So I would say, you feel very similar now potentially compared to how you felt then, which is kind of cool. But if you had to rate our program out of 10 now, what do you think that you would give me such a generous rating? 9.5 is pretty high. Like, are you being kind, Greg Ross?
No, no, I like a 9.5. I'm comfortable with a
Oh,
9.5. You know,
okay.
I think a lot of it, like it's funny because a lot of, like, again, as I was reflecting for this conversation, like a lot of the things that were in my head are exactly what I wrote down there. So it's kind of funny, except for the scratch on my nose, which I don't remember. But
Yes.
but yeah, yeah, like it works really well for me. I actually really like, I really liked the transition into the Strong series,
Hmm.
like that shift from it would have been what, Sack, and then Pam Foundations was in there.
Look at
um
you go. Good memory.
but like
Yeah.
with, yeah, with Strong and then with Combinations, like just that, like every month you're sort of doing a new thing. um like, again, just in terms of like keeping me engaged and keeping me interested, because I need to
Hmm.
sort of have my brain turned on as well. That
Yeah.
I have found that way more. I found it really interesting, and then kind of I think, like you said, like you'll we'll start a new sort of program, run through it, and then sort of run through it again. And then, like,
Hmm.
some things get easier. Some things are actually harder for some strange reason. You're,
Yeah.
the weight that might have been a little lighter the first time around now can be a little bit heavier now. So you do get just comfortable enough to be like, okay, I think I've got the hang of it. And it's like, we're doing something new, which is great, which is like, keeps me on my toes.
Yeah, it's a variety principle, right? So there's all these principles that we learn. So specificity would be one, and variety is another, right? So in order to progress in our bodies, our nervous system will get used to the same thing all the time. So we need to be constantly doing essentially the same push, pull, hinge things. That's really all your body does is push, pull, and hinge. It can be very basic, but it's also very complex when you bring in a whole bunch of different, varying body weights and varying equipment. And now with the, online piece, a lot of people hesitated through COVID for a long time to actually buy more equipment because we didn't know how long it was
Mm.
going to happen for. So it was like, am I going to invest in all this
Yeah,
stuff? And then maybe in
yeah.
6 months we'll go back. And then it was like, okay, we still can't go back. We still can't go back. We still can't go back. And now there's this group of you that were like, you know what? We're never going back. This is what we're doing now. So let's not worry about it. And people are moving cities.
The
And
water
so here
bottles. I
we are.
remember the water bottles
Yes.
where it was like,
Use
it's
weight,
fine. We'll just be
everybody.
fine with water bottles.
It's fine.
Um, and
Let's
then I
get
remember
this
at one
sweat
point you're
in.
like, I think you need some real weights, I think. And I was
Yeah,
like, okay, I think you're probably right.
it's
I'm like
time.
twirling water bottles above my head. I'm like, yeah, you're probably right about that.
Yeah, for sure. No, but overall, I would say despite the transition, things have gone really, 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 really well. So, my third question is to this day, we meet 3 to 4 times a week, more often, more recently, because of course you've had some free
Yeah,
time in this transition for
yeah.
yourself. Um, and you meet primarily over Zoom community training, which I kind of wanted to talk about just a little bit because there's this accountability piece where you're able to book an appointment and you have a scheduled time. You know that I'm going to be there. So I'm holding you accountable, but I'm also holding you accountable to each exercise that you're doing because you're working at your maximum capacity instead of sort of slacking off,
Mhm.
if you will, because no one's eyes are really on you. So I've compared this often to programs where you can go in and log in on your own and it's just like, okay, here's the program, let's have a chit chat on the phone, do it on your own, and we'll check back in like a month. But I learned very, very quickly that that probably wasn't going to work for the majority of people because people were going to need a little bit more accountability, not only in general, but specific to each exercise and during their workout. So um, how do you exercise using strength conditioning, or how do you feel exercising using the combination of the strength, the conditioning, and the kin stretch serves you as it's set up in strong and in combination series compared to the 30-day programs we were doing before?
Oh, I mean, I think it's huge,
Mm.
mainly because it 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 forced me a little bit to go back to my reasons for starting. Like when I started,
Mm.
you probably kept that too. You probably have that somewhere. But I remember
Mm-hmm.
when I first started, like I knew exactly why I was embarking on this. Like I had very specific things in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so for me, the ability to sort of see it laid out and then go, what do I want to prioritize has meant like I I don't know, maybe you haven't noticed, I don't do a lot of conditioning.
Yeah. You don't need
So
it,
I'll
right?
well and yeah, and so what I've found that I've done is, there's 2 or 3 months a year where there's my sports are on a break, so I'm kind of doing
Exactly.
nothing else. And so I do all my conditioning. I do like 6 months of conditioning in like 2 or 3 months. But for most of the year, because I'm either playing tennis or I'm curling and I'm moving quite a bit, that it's a lot of just strength stuff to keep my strength up so that I don't injure myself doing
Hmm.
sports.
Yeah.
And then lots of mobility stuff. And like the kin stretch stuff is probably the biggest like light bulby moment for me, just in terms of like
Yay.
what you can get out of it.
Mm.
Because I think, I don't know why. I think maybe in the beginning, I think because we were calling them sort of restore and energize or whatever, like it always felt like we're going to do hard work and then we're going to do a day where we're just relaxing. And then
Yes.
I remember there was sort of a point where it turned into like kin stretch. And I remember sort of logging on and being like, oh, I think I'm just going to do one of the stretch classes. And you will always say when somebody says, I'm just going to do one of the stretch classes,
Yep.
inevitably you'll say, It's not, why just? Don't say just. It's not just
Exactly.
a stretch class. It's you
Yes.
know, you're doing a lot of hard work. And then, of course, there's, you know, hovers and there's all these things you're doing that they're damn hard. Like, it's hard, like you're sweating, stretching. And it was just really helpful just to be like, oh, I actually need to do this every once in a while, because otherwise, you know, the strength gains aren't going to be what they could be if, you know, I'm all rigid and, you know, can't
Hmm.
move my joints. So,
Yeah.
you know, so just that ability to sort of be like, you know, these make sense as strength days, these make sense as stretch days, and then the conditioning days, I'll sort of do them kind of around, again, just for like me and feeling like I kind of know what I want to do. It allows me to sort of do that. So,
Hmm. Yeah.
um, whereas the 30 days was a little like, day one is this, day two is
Yeah.
this, day three is this, which
Exactly.
which was good for the time, because it again,
Yeah.
like, I actually think during the pandemic it was good to have everything really structured because life was crazy. So it was like, I'm just
Hmm.
going to log in and it's day three and you're going to tell me what day three is, and that felt very warm and safe.
Safe.
um, yeah. Whereas now, you know, it allows a person to sort of be a little bit more, to customize it a little bit more, and so
Exactly.
it feels like I'm sort of back with my goals, and
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, thanks for that answer. It's really, and you said at the beginning that what you just said sort of reminded me what you said at the beginning, which is that it's very obvious to you at this point in this stage of your participation that the programs are very well thought out, which I appreciate, because as the movement science nerd that I am, I spend hours and hours and hours structuring and planning every single intricate detail of how the program is set up. And I'm also thinking about people's preferences and people's time frames and trying to make sure that, you know, there's not too much banter, but there's enough banter to keep people engaged, but I'm not too silly and I'm still professional. And it's like the lights are hitting in the right spot. And there's all these different details on this end to kind of produce that for you guys. But overall, my goal is that you have a coach that's consistent and reliable and always here for you when you can be consistent and reliable and always here, and that you're able to start thinking more like a kinesiologist just as it relates to you. So not necessarily that you would have the skill set to say, oh, hey, Nick, you should be doing this based on what you want to do. But now you have a better
Right.
idea specific to what you need. So I've found that since we went from, I specifically, you know, structured those programs day to day because it was such a sensitive, hard time where people were struggling so much that self-selecting was like people's brains were exploding. It was like, I can't do this. This is too
Yeah.
much, which
Yeah.
I don't know how I was able to anticipate that right at the beginning when we started this. But after we did strength, we did our S&M program right when I had my first, right when I had Holly. And that was a 3-month process. And then we had our PAM program and then SAC and foundations. And through observing people go through that, what I learned was, you know, if I'm a good coach, I can teach people how to self prescribe a little bit more now that they have been around a little
Mm.
bit more, right? And so I wanted the process to be me always here to guide you and answer the questions, but I wanted to empower people by helping people realize that you can self prescribe if I can separate things out a little bit more so that you can pick and choose. And then, in addition to the new format of programming, we also have that mini mobility page that allows people to go in and treat a specific joint if they're, you know, borderline like, oh, the shoulder, this chronic shoulder thing is kind of coming back. Like I need to step back for a second and prevent injury and make sure that I'm just really taking care of this. And so you can go in and do a 7 to 15 minute, you know, mobility series where you're getting the foam rolling and the hovers from Kinstretch and flowing stretching and static stretching and really treat areas. So the feedback has been that the combination of those things has not only given people a little bit more empowerment to sort of self-prescribe a little bit more. This to be said, it takes months and months and months of practice and learning and movement experience for people to be in that place to be able to do that. So it's really cool as a
Right.
coach to feel as though I don't have to give you all of the answers. I'm here to answer all the questions and give you many of the answers. But the cool thing now is that you can answer some of those questions on your own and make some of those decisions about what you need on any given day because of what happened that week or the day before, or, when you had your move. And now Jamie has moved to Vancouver and she's painting her house. And so she's using the wrist mini mobility series and treating her
Oh yeah.
wrists because the overload in her forearm. She's like, Angie, I would love to do a strong four, whatever strength day of where she's at in her program, but like I can't lift my arm, like, but I still want to show up and do something. So like, is there a solution for that? Like almost asking the question as if it must be an impossibility that there's a solution. And I'm like, just like nerding it out, like, voila, here's the solution, right? So that's very cool to hear that feedback from you, because I do feel like you've come a long way in terms of, knowing better what you specifically need for yourself based on where you are at in the season and what else is going on.
Yeah, and then the only exclamation point I put at the end of that is something that I wrote down, which was about like me never having been injured is actually
Mm.
like the wildest thing of them all. Because like I came in, you know, like I wrote down, like I'm a very slight person. Like I'm not like I had never done anything, right? So I was like mid 30s, little. um, and to kind of like to go back to something else that I had said, like if I had just stumbled into a place where someone was just going to say, do 20 of those and 50 of those and 50 of those and just yell at me and I'll just run in a circle.
Yeah.
Like which is a space that works really well for some people. And I think also for people that maybe are less prone to injury, great. Fill your boots. And
Yeah.
you'll get the happy hormones from moving your body. That's great. But like for me, I know, like from where I was at, like I would have hurt myself
Mm.
fairly quickly. And then I would have thought, oh, I guess, the gym is not a place for me because clearly I can't do these things. And that would have been the end, right?
Uh,
Like that would have just been it. It would have been like, try a thing, hurt myself, stop doing the thing.
right.
Um, and so like when I talk about the ways in which like you're talking the whole time about like this is a way that you can modify it, you can do it heavier, you can do it lighter, like the yeah, I just think it's incredible that
Mm.
I've like one of my whole reasons for even embarking on this was that I was just hurting myself all the time.
Mm.
Right, I had just finished a curling season. That's why I know that we started in the spring, because I had just
Right.
finished a bonspiel. It was the end of the season. My body was a mess. Like it was the end of the season. My leg hurt, my arm hurt. I played terrible. I was all depressed, and I was just like,
Mm.
I never want to feel this way ever again. Like I, like my body had let me down.
Mm.
And so so for me, I go back to this a lot because like I have so much, I have so many feelings about like being injured and hurting myself that
Yeah.
it would have really been, uh, like it really would have been the end for me because I was so stressed out about getting injured as it was that like I could, looking back, had I gone in a different direction, I know for sure I'd be long done by now. Like because I just wasn't, I wasn't very strong.
Right.
And I could just see that without that someone actually paying attention to what my body was doing, I would have just hurt myself, and then I would have been freaked out from being injured again. And then I don't know, I'd be
Right.
wearing all sorts of a full body brace by this point. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's a valuable point to bring
Thinking
up.
back,
Totally. Yeah. And Jamie and I she brought up similar things as well in our conversation. And what she noted to me that she hadn't noted to me in the time that we started around, I think she's been about a year and a half now, and she started exclusively online. I've never met her in person, but she does the midday session. So I see her somewhere between 5 and 6 times a week usually. And she had noted to me that she had been in chronic back pain for a little over 15 years, and nothing nothing worked up until she met me and tried this. So she was referred by a really good friend of mine. And after just watching her struggle and get injured and never, get re-injured, and to a point where she wasn't able to get out of bed without pain. So when we started together, she was like, I'm at a complete loss. I'll do anything. Can you help me? And in my brain, I thought, well, I hope so. I think so in theory, but you have to show up, because if you're not doing the work, or if something happens and then you shy away and step away for a number of weeks, then it's very quickly that all of this progress goes away, and then you're starting at the beginning again, right? So it's working through those barriers with people and helping people really stick with it when things get tough, like emotionally, because being in pain is very emotional. It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
And people have this thought process and this idea about what they should be able to accomplish or do out in the world, or what activities they want to engage in. But if they're not getting that, mobility acquisition, then they can't get strength acquisition. And oftentimes people are doing these like weird ballistic stretches, or like this static stretching, and even if they do it consistently, there's still no result from that, because they're not actually doing the right stuff. So it's always my concern that people go to, a general class where, sure, fill your boots if it works for you, that's great. But for any of the population who have been injured in the past and don't fully understand the injury, chances of them being re-injured and quitting, and then determining exactly what you just said, is that's a huge part of the population. And those people usually are on my doorstep going, okay, I've tried everything. Can you help me? And so when Jamie came around,
Mm-hmm.
my thought was, well, my community is very small. I have worked with all of these people at this point in person. And so I was pretty confident that because I had trained you and seen you in person, that might have been why this format was working so well for the people I had.
Mm.
So she was one of the first people, and there's been multiple now since then, that I have taken on that I never met before. So, we would meet via Zoom, and I would do that functional movement screen just via Zoom. And they were like, how can you see that my left knee is not flexing to this degree? Like, are you a magician? Like, how are you noticing this? So in my brain, I don't know. Like, I think a decade of practice watching people push, pull, and hinge, that's probably a skill set within me that makes it very easy for me, to which I wasn't really sure I could do that for her. But she's had an amazing result, and she's not in pain, and she lives her life, and she can move and do whatever she wants now. So that also makes me cry, and I have to hold back tears, because, when I set out, going on nearly 12 years now in this career, after 7 years of studying, embarrassingly enough, which I should have really done my undergrad in 4 years, but I thought, I'm mature. I'm a nerd. I'm going to work full time and also do this, and it'll be fine. I'll get to my career eventually. Right. And so my dream at the beginning was to empower people the way you sit here today, empowered, and feel the way that you feel about your fitness and about your body. And so it just makes me cry. Like, I'm just so proud of you and so happy that even though, we're not in the gym and we're not doing what we were doing originally, you're still thriving and doing amazing, if not better. And so as a coach, there's nothing better than having someone show up and do the work, because if you don't put the paces and the reps in, then I can't say whether or not something that I gave you as overload is effective or not. Right. And oftentimes
Yeah.
people will get re-injured, and then they get scared, and then they back away for a while. And it's like, no, 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 no. Just come, keep your habit, and we'll modify. We'll just do something, because not only is there the physiological overload and habit for the nervous system, but mentally, it's your thoughts control the whole game, right? So if you get injured, then you're like, no, 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 I can't show up and do the workout. It's like, well, we can be really specific and prescribe something that you can do to just keep that
Right.
joint fully out of it for now, until you get a little bit further along in your healing, so you're no longer scared to get hurt, and we'll just keep it
Right.
pushing and modify. So it takes a lot of, work and support, but if people are willing to put the work in, the results have been really inspiring. So I think that's a really valuable thing that you noted, because injury is definitely, um it's expected. Like, you will get hurt probably, but you haven't really. I mean, you can notice when something may be will maybe occur. And then we
Oh yeah,
prescribed just
sure.
not that long ago, like specific ankle mobility to prep you for tennis, right?
Yeah,
So it was like,
yeah.
well, we had this other community member who had this unfortunate injury, but he has decided not to do all of these things. So let's give you all of this stuff and learn from that
Yeah,
to make sure that that doesn't happen to you, to which you did. And alas, here you are, fine and thriving. So, hey, science works,
yeah,
right?
no. Well, and for sure, and it's not to say, I haven't had little injuries
Mm-hmm.
over the year, but it's never, like I said, I think like the worst thing and the thing that like I know of people who've been in this situation is, especially for people that like don't naturally feel comfortable in a gym or don't have a history in a gym, like you know I'm like the poster child for those people. Like I'm a queer person. I'm a slight person. Like, um, it was like the scariest thing I've ever done in my life was taking the first few steps. And there are other people that I think, like I said, if you kind of end up in the wrong place and you just end up in a situation where you're just doing, 50 wall balls or whatever, I know for sure that um, at that first sign of injury, it's not just like, oh, I'm injured. It's like, oh, I'm injured and I didn't really belong here to begin with. And so
Mm,
I'm going to stop
right,
embarrassing myself and I'm not going to come back. So it's like the injury part is kind of one thing, but I think when you're already feeling a little bit freaked out, that ability to just be
right.
like, you're going to be fine here. Like, we're going to work together and it's going to be fine, I think is
Yeah,
just really like, especially for people, like if people are watching this and like, and it's about like getting started, like
right.
that's made all the difference, is just
Mm,
those first few building new habits and just getting more comfortable,
mm,
where yeah, you're sort of easing into it and you feel like you're in good hands, right? You
mm-hmm,
could put that on your
mm.
website, like
Yeah,
you're in
you'll
good
be in good
hands,
hands
right?
here. I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
that's very nice. Yeah, Stuart Murray put it in sort of a similar way, and he said he sort of led our conversation many months ago with, I've always admired that you have a very high level of respect for what people are trying to work on. And I was like, oh,
Mm,
great. I mean, I think I do feel that way, but I'm so happy that you are getting that from the interaction that we have together, right? So again, with him, it's always a little bit different because he's been around for a million years and was one of my first clients way back at the very beginning when I knew nothing. And so my coaching skills, I hope over 12 years have, changed and evolved and gotten better. And so that's been kind of an interesting journey for him and I. But I definitely would say now, as I seek more online people to serve who do recognize either that the gym doesn't work for them or that they have tried going to the gym and it's not that it doesn't work, but they're just re-injuring themselves all the time and they want to maybe
yeah.
try to work with someone who has that degree and all these, years of experience. I don't know whether or not those are kind of the two primary things or what people's thought process would be to engage with me and think about hiring a trainer. But I think that
Mm,
certainly, getting people in a situation regardless of what the training method is, i i I do recognize that it is very important that people are respected for what it is that they want to accomplish, and I think with that comes this feeling of safety. Like, you won't ever be judged for your thoughts about XYZ. And I will give you the science and we will just address everything step by step as these things come up for you, because you are the only human being that's exactly like you. So I can't treat you the way I treat anybody else. I have to treat you and adapt how I'm dealing with your tendencies and preferences and what you need for you, not for, what I do with other people. So I think that coaching, if you're going to do it successfully, you certainly need to respect what people are trying to accomplish and that includes where people have come from. And so I definitely knew you were very candid when you walked in the gym, like how you felt. And I was like, I am fully excited to convert this person 100% to feel like a fitness person in his own right, in his own way. and feel comfortable and, and proud and strong and mobile and injury free and all these things. So you're like a walking Pringle P poster child. And certainly for online as well, because you've done every single program since the beginning, which we're almost 3
Yeah.
years into that now. So it's like, this is not, it's not like you've just been, explored a couple programs and yay, it works for you. Like, I think we can say that it's pretty successful and thriving for you. And you would be one of the people within the community that can really comment on that, because you have actually done nearly every single workout that I have, been back here recording
Yeah.
and putting out for you,
Yeah.
right? So that you do
Yeah.
have to do
Yeah.
the work, right? Like, I'm not a miracle worker, but I will meet you exactly where you are and hold your hand through the whole
Yeah.
way and hope that you feel safe, and that you wind up in this position is the goal, is where you're sitting in a new city. And talk to me about how this program, before I wrap up with kind of our last question, is talk to me
I'm
specifically
just going to
about
plug you in.
having, yeah, for sure, about how having this constant in your life through the move has particularly helped from an emotional perspective, with all of the
Oh
things
boy.
that come up when you like uproot your entire life and get engaged and, follow the person you love to his dreams in a different city. I mean, he was in Winnipeg for quite a number of months as well, to which you moved from your apartment to a home, and that
Yeah.
was something
Yeah.
that you explored for a while. And then it was like, okay, now we're going to make this big move to Toronto. Now we're engaged. Now I'm going to get a new job. And so that is like a lot of really heavy, big changes, to which I say, Craig Ross, you and I, like,
Hmm.
deep down in our souls, are very similar, because I personally have done all this crazy uprooting to follow my partner into this country land and have these babies and follow this
Yeah.
dream to be happy, whatever that means, right? So talk to me about the consistency
Sure.
of fitness through that journey.
It's probably a few different things, because I mean, some of it is, um, moving around is good, and kind of like what I'd said before, anyone can do that anytime. Like, it's just good to just move your body, and if nothing else, that's a good place to start.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in terms of like specifically like the way the program is structured, I mean, the Zoom piece, which I think I remember when it all started, where it was like, well, why don't you just give us videos? And like, it
Yeah.
was a long,
You're having a
I just
baby.
remember
Do
it
you
was like,
have to show up? I was like, I think I
it
do.
was like, it was months and months of people being like, are you sure you need to do this? um
Like
and
me, if I
and
needed to
it's
do
and
it.
it's
Yeah.
funny. And it's, yes, yeah, you. And it's
Yes.
it's funny. I mean, it's funny now because it's a little bit different now, because I think some of the people I started with aren't around right now, and it's just a little bit different. I'm a little bit of, sometimes I'm the only person at my time. um
Exactly. Yep.
but definitely, just in terms of like, it's the community piece, right?
Mm,
It's the what has been most important for me in this transition is to like structure my time, because I'm like, when you're not working, like, it's really easy just to sort of sleep, never set an alarm. Like, there would be no
right.
reason for me to ever set my alarm.
Yeah.
um just wake up, and like, and again, you know I worked really hard during the pandemic. Like, I
Ah,
don't feel guilty for relaxing or anything like that, but it would not have served me just to live that way. It would have just been too loose.
right.
um so what's been really like important, like really, really important and helpful, is just having those set times where, like, it's like a date, right? And like, I can't be late. Like, there's probably other people there, and even if no one else is there, you're going to be there.
That's right.
um and so it's like, I have a place to be, and you know most of the time, that's the only thing in my day that I have to be at a specific place at a specific time. And when
Mm-hmm.
you multiply that by, like, 2 months at this point, you know it I don't know how I would have. I'm not sure how I would have made it.
Mm,
Right? Like, just because, I would have had 2 months where I never had to be anywhere at any time. um and and that can just be really tricky. And again, like, I'm at the point now, I guess, where I would like to work.
Yeah.
I'm ready. I feel refreshed. I feel like I'm ready.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, just like structure is just really important,
Hmm.
and that, and coming from like having been a part of the community for so long, like I feel like I kind of owe that back, right? So it's not
Ah,
just,
interesting.
yeah, like it's not just like, oh well, maybe I'll be there, maybe I won't, but I kind of feel like, you know, you know, it's helpful to me, but also I owe it back to be like, you
Wow.
know, still part of the crew,
Right.
in a way that's like really important, because for a while, like that would be the only real community that I can be a part of, right? Like you can,
Right.
you know, message your friends or whatever, or, you know, call your
Sure.
dad, you know, you could do those
Yeah.
things, but it's not the same thing as like feeling like multiple times a week I'm going to be with these people.
Yeah.
And that sort of consistency is just
Hmm.
really, yeah, has been just really impactful. It's like the pandemic, like it's not so different, where it was like
Right.
everything had blown up, but and it was weird because we weren't used to it. But like, you know, it's like, oh hello, like Angie's in the little screen, and there are these other people that I know, like that
Right.
I would spend multiple times a week with, and we're all just
Hmm.
going to do the thing together.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's just been multiple experiences, and you would have gone through the same thing with all your transitions. That like the one constant is, you know, I know these people, and they, you know,
Right.
they talk to me, and you know,
Yeah.
they're all
Yeah.
around when I'm around.
That's right.
It's a
Yeah.
community.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. I love how there's so many things there that you said that I could dissect, but I'll choose just a few because I can ramble, as you well know. But
So
the
can
like
I,
that
as it
you,
turns out.
yeah. Yeah. I think people in this community probably are like that. We draw in what we put out, right? So no surprise there. But
Mm,
I think when you say owe it back, I had this little revolutionary moment because now that Holly is going to be almost 2 and my second is going to be in like 5 days, 6 months old, I have obviously pushed myself to my utter limits to keep this thing rocking and keep these people together because I don't know if why that is. I would have to be a little bit introspective about that and think maybe back to my childhood or like
mhm.
why I felt that was so important.
Yeah.
But I also was very committed to making sure that I wasn't taking on more clients that I could handle while having these babies. So sometimes you are on your own because I haven't just left the community open and continued to take on more people because I was setting those barriers and limits for myself that I felt very, very strongly that the people that had been with me for years before the pandemic, that I owed it to them to keep showing up. Even if it wasn't in the
Mm,
same way, it's like if I'm giving you these resources and these workouts are recorded and there for you, and I'm here via Zoom or independent workouts, and there's these support calls that you can book, if I'm always here, they probably will also show up and be here. But if I don't show up, that will all fall apart right away, very quickly. So, no matter what the challenge is on this end, I know if I know nothing else, and obviously the nerd piece of me is always there. So I know all of that knowledge and it's easy for me to spit it out in a format that you can consume. But if nothing else, I know that I felt very much indebted to the people who I had worked with before the pandemic. And I felt like I owed it to show up regardless of my personal choices. Because to me, that's not relevant to our work that we do together. That's my professional hat that I'm putting on. And I need to show up for you because if I show up, you'll also show up, right? And if you don't show up, then where are you going to go? And what's going to happen? And like, I'm not, after all the years that you showed up before this transition online, I would never, leave you to go and find something else because I had faith and confidence that I could figure it out for you and that this would work. So it's very beautiful in a lot of ways because as you're talking, I'm like, wow, the same thing at the end of our conversation is coming up that came up with Jamie, but in a different way. And what really worked for her was that I particularly help her to understand how other practitioners should be involved in her wellness, like chiropractics and
mm,
massage and all these different things. She was like, that's one thing that I've never had before is like, I'm trying to figure out what I need for what things. And no other practitioner seems to be able to help me figure out all the things that I need. And I was like, oh, I mean, maybe that's because I have this degree in kinesiology and all this experience and this referral team, and there's this piece that works for you, right? But I've never heard a member put it that way. Like I felt like I owed it to the community in a way to keep showing up and like doing my part, if you will. And so I think because our community is small, and oftentimes, sometimes when you log in, you're on your own because people start like almost an hour before you. But I've always
Yeah.
respected the time that you want to show up because that's a critical part for it working for you. If I ask you to show up an hour before you're ready to start the day, it's probably not going to work, right? So the fact that you have the freedom to show up a little bit later behind the others, at least I'm saying to you, oh, these two people just left, or these people aren't here today, but you're still connected
Yeah.
because they're doing their workout at a different time. So I suppose more than what I realize, there is this community. I mean, there's so many of you that are still here making this work. And it's, I think, like human to human, regardless of like the profession or the investment in the service. I think that's kind of when you strip everything away. It's like, hey, wait, we're all humans that just want to connect with other people and be connected as human beings on the planet. And like, isn't that such a beautiful, basic concept? Like, I love that you answered that way.
Well,
That I didn't expect you to answer in that way. I'm like, I'm going to be like thinking and reflecting on that more today.
well, but like you said, you get back what you put out, and something that has always been very interesting to me is just like the people that are in the community are so not what I expected
Yeah.
coming in.
Yes.
Because I remember we did 3 private lessons, and then you were like, "Okay, you're going to do the semi-private," and I was like, "No, I don't think I want to do that." And then I remember
That's
you
right.
said
I
something
forgot
like,
about that.
"Everyone," you were like, "Everyone's a character," and I was like,
Hmm.
what is that? What does that mean? And then I was like, and then I showed up and I was like, oh, everyone is a character. Like you, and again, not
Yes.
having a background, being terrified of gyms, like you just assume, kind of assume what you're going to find. And it was like, oh, and it was, it was, and it still is like there's teachers and politicians and entrepreneurs and engineers and all these people. And it was like, how did this ragtag group come together? And again, like different bodies, different ages, different fitness levels. And I think it's just that like because you're a bit of a nerd, I think you've attracted people who are like really engaged, and like they're the kinds of
Hmm.
people who probably get what I get out of it, which is like, oh, I'm doing it and I like doing it, but I also like feel like I understand what's going on.
Hmm. Yeah.
Which I think probably explains why, if there were any, sort of people that wouldn't work for, people that just want to be sort of yelled at and just
Right.
they want to run in a circle,
Yeah.
this would not necessarily be super engaging for them because maybe there'd be too much information and I don't care. But
Maybe. Yeah.
it's
Interesting.
funny though that at this point, I sort of look around the Zoom and it's like, oh, it's a bunch of like really brainy people.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true, actually.
so it's
Hmm.
interesting.
That is very interesting. Yeah, and I do really, I often wonder because everyone is so diverse, and so I often am wondering and holding myself to the standard of making sure that what I offer is adaptable for everybody with a little bit of support. And I find that for the most part that's effective. Like Linda Davies started in September of 2011 and she still has her session. She doesn't do Zoom. She that didn't And it's simply from her perspective, like she's in her 70s now. And so from
Mm.
her perspective, she didn't have the technology to support it in the beginning. Like there's no two pieces of technology. There's an iPad
Oh
that
yeah,
won't
yeah.
run
Hmm.
both. And so that was ultimately the reason why she didn't do the Zoom, but she did do the live classes because at that time you only needed the one
Oh
device with
yeah,
the one
right.
app
Hmm.
running at one time, right? But I find it interesting because we have modified. And so she has her day that she checks in, and regardless of kind of what's going on in her life, she'll message me on that day. Like Tuesday is her day when she's going to do what she needs to do based on what she needs. And she'll give me feedback and I'll recommend sessions to her. And then we check in over the phone. So because I worked with her for a decade before this happened, I feel like she can, adapt and take out and pull out classes that also work for you, despite the fact that she's nothing like you at all in any way, right? You would have very, very little in common other than your human beings. And so it is interesting that you mentioned that, is that everyone in our community is a completely different age, body type, has different preferences, but the one consistent is that they know that they want wellness in their life and fitness. They know that they need to move their bodies, but in a smart, safe way that doesn't put them at risk, right? And so
Right.
it's very, you
Well,
all sort of have those things in common.
and I think like even for someone like me who's like, no, I'm not 70, but tomorrow I could, roll my ankle or something. And I am going to have to be like, hey, Angie, I want to
Yeah.
do this, but now I only have one leg. So
Yeah.
what are we going to do about that?
How
So
do
it's
we
just,
figure this out?
yeah, like it's comforting to know that like, no matter, what happens to me,
Yeah.
that there's always going to be a way that I can continue doing something, which again, if it was just, if it was just a video where, you're just saying, do 8 of these, and then you just sort of music plays and you're not doing all the talking that you do, it would be
Yeah.
really hard to sort of adapt that. And then so usually like I'll pick things up in the videos where you're like, and if you can't, bend that way, and I'm like, oh yeah, I guess there are people that can't bend that way, like you don't even
Right.
necessarily
Yeah. Yeah.
realize it. But
Mm-hmm.
if for some reason it wasn't in the video, then I just turn
Mm-hmm.
around and go, Angie, what do I do? So
help,
like I
help me.
haven't, and I haven't needed a lot of that, but like
Yeah,
there's no
for
reason
sure.
why, like I said, tomorrow I might. So it's
Yeah.
nice to know that it's
Yeah.
there. I'm not, it's not so tenuous that
Right.
I'm one rolled ankle away from being like, okay, sorry, I'll see you in
See you
6 months or
later.
whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Okay, well, I love all of this. I obviously could ask a million more questions, but let's wrap up with this final question. This is a good segue. So, if you were speaking to a
Okay.
friend who was really looking for a community or looking to become more active and they had tried different things and things didn't work, what would you share with someone who would be interested in and just open to trying anything? What would you want them to know about this community? And you probably have already answered this, but as we wrap up, we'll just
Yeah.
put it in a
A summary.
let's summarize this conversation. Yeah. Yeah. What would we tell them
Well,
about what
and I
joining our
think like,
community is?
I don't know, I haven't watched the other videos. So I'm going to say something that I'm assuming everyone has said, which is like, if I can do it, like anyone can do it. You like really, I mean, from what and I don't mean to keep belaboring this point, but like I came
Mm,
in a little terrified. I was like, I'm just going to do the private lessons because like other people scare me. I kind
right.
of feel like I don't really belong here and I'm going to embarrass myself.
Mm.
Um, and I remember I said like, I want to stop being injured, but like, don't get rid of my ass. I think is what I said. I think I wrote that down. Um, I'm like the body is fine. I just don't want to keep hurting myself. You can edit that. Anyway,
Yeah. No, no,
um,
I like it. Keep it.
and so from that transitioning to the semi-private and just again like the people that you have surrounded yourself with naturally are people who are like interesting, smart people who have committed to something where they're full participants in it. So
Mm.
what I would sort of say to someone is like, absolutely, you could just go and play something off of YouTube, and that is a way of doing things. But if you actually want to like put some thought into things and you want to sort of be an active participant in your own journey,
Mm.
this is the place to do it. The way that things are set up now, where like you have in-person options, you have the videos that a person could just not do the Zoom and just do the videos, and even that would be way more than you would probably get because, like I said, you're talking or singing through the whole thing. Um, um, or the like combination of the videos and the Zoom. Like there's different ways to sort of personalize things in a way that works for your life.
Mm.
So like, yeah, just again, like I think the proof is in the pudding. Like that I I showed up terrified 4 years later. Like I'm not sore all over. I've, never had a major injury from training. Um, the people were delightful and, continue to be delightful. And I, yeah, that, and yeah, you're obviously the special sauce, right? Like, like,
Don't know.
like because again, it's all the thought and the experience that goes into it. Um, and just, yeah, like being someone who really wants to create like a safe place for people where, we're all sort of wacky. But, you're, just, yeah, just really like non-judgmental. You are meeting us where we're at and supporting us in what we want to do. And yeah, and just, yeah, the proof is really in the pudding. Like, it's a lot of like weird happy people, and you're kind of a weird happy person, and like, and it works. It really works. So yeah,
Does
I would
work.
tell someone
Yeah.
to give it a go.
Yeah, yay. Well, thanks for that. Well, hopefully anyone who's still with us like over an hour later, I'm sure that they would be someone who would follow through and probably belong and sign up for this community. I mean, this is kind of the fun thing about what I like. And I will pull obviously a quote of what you've said as a simple testimony, but I do feel like long form conversations are really the best way to explain to someone who's, as you were in the position of, I'm really scared and I need my mind at ease, that if I'm going to,
Hmm.
organize my life to make this massive investment, I want to know that there's potential that it could work for me. And so that's another,
Hmm.
message that I would like people to hear is it does work, it can work, but you do have to put in the work and make the investment
Hmm.
and put in the time. And if you're willing to do that and you're willing to be engaged and really authentically participate in your own journey, we're a community that will definitely meet you where we are, where you are rather. And, yeah, I like how you put that. We are a wacky bunch of people, and I'm like a wacky happy person, and as are you. And I think that we are all incredibly diverse, but our desire to be connected and to have wellness as one of the primary priorities in our lives to serve everything else that we want to do. This way, this format really lends well to that. And my goal really ultimately is to support you in a way that would set up your body and your physiology and your mind in a way that you can perform optimally in your own life, regardless of what that means for you. And I know after all these years of experience, not only with my own training, but with others, that doing this work and this movement and using movement as medicine works and can set you up to be in a situation that's much different than where you're starting from, right? Like there's this wonderful world of movement that can be associated as something really fun to do, as compared to sort of a little bit more like mechanical, if you will, as it sort of
Hmm.
can be with certain formats. So yeah, well said. Thank you for that. I think it's a very special small community, and it will grow over time as these babies get older and I have more time to invest in people. But I think the last thing that I would like people to know that I feel and to see and really hear from you in this conversation is my priority is to serve every single person in the best way that I can, rather than to grow a really big community and have a lot of people together. I want to make sure that every single person has the attention and the focus that they require or need. And there's different levels to achieve that. And, there's hope for someone who's sitting in a situation that you were in, being afraid, feeling injured all the time and going like, who's going to accept me? Like, where do I find a home? I don't know what to do. I'm
Hmm.
terrified. And, sometimes people need something that they don't know that they need. More often than not, people need what they would never be able to come up with on their own without dabbling and trying. So, yeah. Yeah, get on our wait list.
Hmm.
Listen to this conversation. You're going, ooh, I relate to him. And this is all good things that I'm hearing. Then we'll take more online members, not till January. So we're a couple months out. But I find that it's nice to give people a few months of contemplation before they dive into something like this as well, because it does take work and investment. But if you do it, the proof is in the pudding. I like it.
Well, and I think like the critical period is like the first month, the first couple months of doing things like to sort of build those habits. And that's why I kind of said that thing about like, if you're not kind of careful and being really thoughtful about the journey that you're undertaking, that first month or two is really when you could potentially, hurt yourself or feel like you really don't know what you're doing. Because I think it's really natural and human that like whatever you do at first, you're not going to be very good at it, right? So you need to sort of be in an environment where the first couple months you're not going to hurt yourself. B, you feel like you're in good hands, and that's how you get over that hump of the first couple months, and then you can build a habit. And then next thing you know, it's been 4 years or 4.5 years, and you get to record a video.
Yeah. Yay. Oh, I love it. That's amazing. Well, thanks so much. I was like, I think Craig and I can probably keep this to 30 minutes, but I don't know why I ever think that. I feel like
you should have told me that. I would have pared down all of
No, I love it. I love you just as you are, with everything said exactly as it was. It's perfect. Yeah. So thank you.
Someone who's really anxious will need a whole hour. So someone will watch the whole thing.
For sure. And that's the thing. It's interesting as a practitioner because you're always, in fear that you're going to lose someone's attention. But for anyone who can really relate to anything that you're saying and is really truly looking for a solution after maybe years and years and years of sort of spinning and maybe dabbling in different things, but never really going 100% into committing to something, you got to have some skin in the game, and you got to be willing to get a little uncomfortable, because no great change has ever occurred with, even keister, staying in your comfort zone. Like we don't climb doing that. Like if you're just want to do this all day, you got to, it more looks like this, right?
Well, yeah, you take a bit of a risk, but
yes, yeah, exactly.
Be in good hands.
Yeah, totally. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and energy. I just adore you. You're a poster child for sure for this program, along with a good couple handfuls of others, and a growing community of willing people who are really looking for solutions. So all of the work that you have put in is just amazing to watch. And I feel like you're just kind of starting your journey in a lot of ways, and in a new city, and you're in a body that's stronger and more able, and you're more aware of it. And I'm so incredibly thankful for the opportunity to show up for you. And I love working with you. You're a model client, like a dream for any trainer who just wants to help people change their lives. You have to have willing participants in order to know whether or not these things will work, right? And so you have been amazing. Like, I love it when my girls are looking at the screen as you're doing your workout, and they're like so young still, and they're like, Dada, because they see like a man. No, that's your friend Craig. So Holly she's starting to say like names, and so she's saying when Stuart's on the screen, you can tell I'm telling her who people are. So you're a constant and a consistent person I'm
on the TV
all the time. Yeah. And it's just, I just thank you so much for showing up. I chose this field and this work for a reason, and this is the dream, to have this happen and occur for people. So you're like you allow me to, live my purpose and my dream every day. And it's just means everything to me that you show up. I'm just so proud of you. It's amazing.
Thank you. Well, you got me through the pandemic, and you got me through this move. So
and who knows where we'll go next.
I owe you way more than you owe me. But
no. You've done all the work, not at all. But yes, thank you for your time today. And I'll see you back on, what is it today? Monday. It's Halloween. Monday. Happy Halloween. So I'll see you on Wednesday. Yeah.
Happy Halloween. I should have dressed up this morning. No,
I know. We could have actually had this conversation in costumes if we wanted to, but I wasn't that organized. Oh. I love it. All right.
Oh, well, some other time.
All right. Thank you, my dear. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
Get some rest, for God's sake.
Well, eventually. Yeah, it'll be fine. I will at some point.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. Have a good rest of the day.